After my rebirth back to the day of the engagement banquet, my fiancé was just praising me to others as gentle and virtuous. I smiled and nodded, then pulled out a contract in front of everyone. The dowry can be brought over, but separate households' sole responsibility for profits and losses. Sign it. The whole hall went dead silent. His and his mother's faces instantly turned livid. They didn't know that I was no longer that fool blinded by love from my previous life. My dowry of millions didn't raise a Jinchi's wife, but rather your death warrant. The icy pond water scrambled to surge into my mouth and nose, drowning out my final cry for help. On the surface of the water, the embracing figures of Gu Mingyuan and his cousin, Liu Wan, are twisted and shattered. Qingxi, don't blame me. You come from a merchant family and are ultimately unpresentable. Wanner will take good care of your dowry for you. His voice was so gentle, yet so poisonous. I wanted to scream, wanted to tear apart his hypocritical face, but could only watch myself sink into endless darkness. I sucked in a sharp breath and opened my eyes. No freezing pool water, no despair. What met my eyes were the familiar carved bed curtains, and a faint scent of sandalwood lingered at the tip of my nose. Miss, you are finally awake. The engagement banquet is about to start. Madam is urging you to hurry over. Her personal maid Yongke's face leaned close, filled with anxiety. The engagement banquet. I looked down at my hands, fair, slender, without the thin calluses from years of housework, and certainly without the swelling from drowning. I am back. Back to the year I turned 16, the day of my engagement to Gu Mingyuan. Me heart is pounding crazily in my chest, not from joy, but from burning hatred. Gu Mingyuan, Liu Wanner, the Gu family, for what you owe me in this life, I will make you pay it all back with interest. Miss, what is wrong? You look so pale. I take a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the surging hostility. I can't panic. I can't lose control. In this life, I am no longer that fool blinded by love. I am fine. I stand up, walk to the vanity, and look at my youthful yet undeniably stunning face in the bronze mirror. Do my hair and makeup? At the bottom of the jewelry box lay a fat jade pendant. That was the betrothal token sent by the Gu family in my previous life. I treasured it like a gem. At this moment, I feel only irony. I pick up the jade pendant, my fingertips ice cold. Then, I clench it tightly in my palm until the edges dig painfully into my flesh. Gu Mingyuan, the game has begun. In the banquet hall, glasses clinked and guests mingled, everyone wearing a fake smile. Wearing the standard smile of a well-bred lady, I sit to my mother's side, listening to the woman in the seat of honor, my mother-in-law from my past life, Madame Gu speaking in that characteristic tone of hers, tinged with a hint of charity. Oh my, I tell you, our Mingyuan is just too honest. The other day, the daughter of Lord Wang from the Ministry of Personnel showed interest in him, but he just didn't pay her any mind, devoting himself entirely to his books, and to our Qingxi. I sneered inwardly. In my past life, I believed those words too, and even secretly rejoiced. Hearing it now, it is clearly a jab at our Shen family. Her son is in high demand, and we struck gold by managing to marry up. I raised my eyes and looked at Gu Mingyuan, who was sitting across from her. He was wearing a white long gown, his features handsome and refined, with a perfectly measured, gentle smile on his lips, looking right at me. That look once made my heart race, but now it only makes my stomach churn. He spoke, his voice clear. Mother, you flatter me. It is Mingyuan's good fortune to have Qingxi as a wife. Qingxi is gentle and virtuous. Her nature is most yielding and considerate. Gentle and virtuous. Yielding and considerate. Gu Mingyuan. Do you know that these words bound me like shackles for my entire past life? wanting me to obediently hand over my dowry, obediently serve your mother, obediently accept you taking concubines, and finally obediently go to die. The volcano in my heart was almost about to erupt, but on my face, the smile deepened a few shades. The time is almost here. Sure enough, Madame Gu changed the subject, her gaze inadvertently sweeping over my mother as she smiled. Speaking of this, I heard someone say a few days ago that the Shen family ancestors obtained an exquisite jade Buddha that can bless the family with prosperity and the children with a bright future. I wonder if it is true or false. In my previous life, she used this very topic to half coax and half trick my mother into agreeing to bring that priceless heirloom jade Buddha to the Gu family as my dowry. In the end, that jade Buddha was taken by Gu Mingyuan to curry favor with the third prince, becoming a stepping stone for his promotion. I felt my mother's body stiffen slightly. Gu Mingyuan spoke up at the opportune moment, his tone carrying just the right amount of reproach. "Mother, that is Aunt Shen's family heirloom. How can you mention it so casually?" He looked at me again, his eyes so gentle they could drip water. "Kingxi, Mother is just curious. She means nothing by it. Don't take it to heart." The gaze of the entire room focused on me. Curious means nothing by it. Like hell, I believe you guys. Meeting Gu Mingyuan's affectionate gaze, I slowly stood up, every own quieted down watching me. I kept an impeccable smile on my face, my voice clear, even carrying a hint of innocence. "Is Auntie talking about that jade Buddha? Indeed, we do have it." Madame Gu's eyes lit up. I changed the subject, my gaze landing on Gu Mingyuan. "However, before I show the jade Buddha, there are a few things I, Qingxi, would like to make clear in front of all the elders and brother Mingyuan." From my sleeve, I unhurriedly took out a scroll of paper I had prepared long ago. "What is this?" Gu Mingyuan's smile stiffened slightly. I unfolded the paper. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for everyone in the flower hall to hear clearly. "This is a contract regarding my dowry, including all the land, shops, gold, silver, and antiques provided by the Shen family. And..." I paused, my eyes sweeping over Mrs. Gu's instantly frozen face, before slowly spitting out the final words. "That heirloom jade Buddha." The clamor in the room was cut off like a knife stroke, instantly replaced by dead silence. I clearly read out the core terms, word for word. "All dowry assets shall be held in a separate account, and managed solely by myself, Shen Qingxi, or a member of the Shen clan designated by me. I bear sole responsibility for profits and losses, and it has absolutely nothing to do with my husband's family. That is, the future Jiyu family." Dead silence. Absolute dead silence. I could hear the crisp sound of chopsticks dropping onto a plate coming from the seats nearby. The gentle smile on Gu Mingyuan's face froze completely, then shattered. He looked at me, his eyes filled with utter shock and disbelief. Mrs. Gu was the first to react. She slammed the table with a pa, stood up abruptly with a livid face, and pointed at me, shrieking. "Shen Qingxi, what is the meaning of this? You haven't even married in yet, and you are already thinking about splitting the family assets. You call this gentle and virtuous? You are violating wifely virtues. You are defying your elders." "Wifely virtues? Elders? You call me a good wife when using my money, but call me a cast-off wife once it is gone. Whoever wants to keep these wifely virtues can go right ahead." I sneered repeatedly in my heart, but on my face, I revealed just the right amount of grievance and confusion as I looked at Gu Mingyuan. "Brother Mingyuan, didn't you just praise me for being gentle and considerate? I did this precisely for the sake of our future." I turned to everyone, my tone sincere and logic clear. "Elders, please be the judge. My Shen family is a merchant household, and the dowry contains many shops and estates that require management. My father often says that professional matters should be left to professional people. Brother Mingyuan is destined to take the imperial examinations and become an upright official who speaks out for the people. How can he be entangled in these mundane affairs of money and tarnish his reputation? I've separated my dowry to handle the hard work of managing it myself, and I'll be responsible for any profits or losses. This way, Brother Mingyuan won't be troubled by money matters and can focus on his career, and it also avoids dragging down the Guyu family's reputation if I manage things poorly in the future. Isn't this the most appropriate and virtuous thing to do? I looked at Gu Mingyuan, my eyes filled with sincerity. Brother Mingyuan, everything I do is for you. For our future. You wouldn't misunderstand me, would you? Gu Mingyuan's face turned red, then white. His lips pursed tight. Those eyes that were always full of affection shot a cold and sinister glint at me for the first time. He stared dead at me, as if knowing me for the first time. He understood. How was this me being virtuous and considerate? I was doing this right in front of everyone, using the most high-sounding reason to forcibly sever the hand his Gu family was stretching toward my Shen family's wealth. The air solidified like an iron plate. The conflict, already like an arrow leaving the string, completely erupted at this moment and instantly rose to its peak. Brother Mingyuan, I just wanted to plan for our future. Why is Auntie so angry? Was I wrong to do this? This move of retreating to advance directly kicked the ball to Gu Mingyuan. The muscles on Gu Mingyuan's face twitched. He was, after all, a future veteran of officialdom. He quickly forced down his shock and rage, putting that gentle and refined mask back on. Kingxi, since you and I are already betrothed, we are one as husband and wife. Why distinguish between us? By doing this, aren't you carving a chasm between us? If people saw this, it would only make us a laughing stock. He took a step forward, attempting to get close to me. Won as husband and wife, what is yours is mine, and what is mine is still mine. Gu Mingyuan, this smooth talk of yours won't work on me. I watched him put on his show, feeling nothing inside, even wanting to laugh a little. In my past life, he used these empty promises to sweet-talk me into emptying out the whole Shen family. I lowered my lashes to hide the mockery in my eyes, and when I looked up again, they were glistening with tears, making me look even more wronged and innocent. Brother Mingyuan, you've misunderstood me. It is precisely because I trust you and respect you that we need to draw up this contract. I turned to the crowd, raising my voice a little. You are all sensible elders. You must know how many couples in this world turn against each other, and families fall into discord, all stemming from unclear finances in the beginning. My Shen family's dowry is generous. That is a fact. Brother Mingyuan is noble and unsullied, disdaining the stench of money. That is also a fact. But that is exactly why I am afraid. My tone became agitated, carrying a young girl's pure worry. I am afraid that in the future, if by any chance, just if, I make a mistake while managing my dowry and lose money, it will tarnish Brother Mingyuan's good name and cause the Gu family to suffer losses. I am more afraid that those petty people out there will use this to badmouth Brother Mingyuan, saying he is after his wife's dowry and living off a woman. Living off a woman. These words, like a poisonous needle, precisely pierced the most sensitive and vain nerve of Gu Mingyuan and his mother. Mrs. Gu's face instantly turned the color of pig liver. The gentleness in Gu Mingyuan's eyes was also nearly impossible to maintain, flashing with a trace of hostility. I struck while the iron was hot, raising the deed in my hand and speaking earnestly. With this contract established, it is down in black and white, crystal clear. In the future, whether my dowry makes a profit or a loss, it has nothing to do with the Guyu family and nothing to do with Brother Mingyuan's official career or clean reputation. How is this drawing a divide? This is clearly a protective talisman to guard against villains, preserve a clean name, and avoid future discord over money and vulgar things that would hurt the affection between husband and wife. My gaze swept across the entire room. Clearly, my logic of thinking for my husband held water. Nonsense. You are twisting words. You just don't want to hand over the dowry. How is a jealous, shrewd, and calculating woman like you worthy of entering my Gu family's door? Mother, Gu Mingyuan shouted in a low voice, stopping his mother from saying anything more disgraceful. He knew that if this scene continued, the Gu family's reputation for coveting the daughter, in-law's dowry, would truly be cemented. He took a deep breath and looked at me again, his eyes complex, as if he were scrutinizing a completely unfamiliar enemy. He tried to make a final effort. Kingxi, do you really intend to be so heartless, disregarding the affection between us? Affection. When you pushed me into the lotus pond, did you consider even a shred of affection? I met his gaze, no longer pretending to be weak. The aggrieved look on my face faded away, replaced by a determination so calm it was absolute. Brother Mingyuan, this isn't being heartless. This is my bottom line. This contract represents my dignity as Shen Qingqi and my sincerity towards our future marriage. If you aren't willing to give me even this much respect. I paused, and under everyone's horrified gaze, I did something earth-shattering. I gripped both ends of the contract and made a move to tear it apart. Then we might as well not get married. And as for this dowry, I, Shen Qingqi, won't bring over a single penny. Rip. The slight sound of tearing paper rang out. I had ripped a small tear at the top of the contract. Don't, Qingxi. My father and mother cried out in unison. Madame Gu was so scared she rushed forward a step, her eyes fixed dead on the contract in my hands. As if that wasn't paper, but the Gu family's future mountain of gold and silver. Gu Mingyuan's expression changed completely. All his composure and pretense crumbled away in that instant. He understood. Shen Qingxi was serious. She wasn't throwing a tantrum. She was laying her cards on the table. If he didn't sign, the Shen family might really call off the wedding, and that dowry worth millions would be lost to the Jiu family forever. The situation he and his mother had painstakingly built would be ruined in an instant, and he would become the laughingstock of the entire capital. Sign it. Even though the dowry can't be touched for now, but at least she is here. The engagement stands, and later, there will always be a way to slowly scheme. Greed ultimately triumphed over anger and calculation. Just as I made a move to completely tear up the contract, Gu Mingyuan almost ground his molars as he squeezed the voice out of his throat. I'll sign. The whole crowd went into an uproar. Madame Gu looked at her son in disbelief. Mingyuan, you mother, what Qingxi said makes sense. To avoid suspicion and for the sake of my reputation, signing it is for the best. He almost rushed forward, snatching that nearly torn contract from my hands. His hands were trembling slightly. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or something else. He stared fixedly at the terms on it. Every word felt like it was slicing his flesh. He took a deep breath, practically using all his strength just to keep from losing his composure. Brush, he said hoarsely. The servant tremblingly handed over the brush and ink. Gu Mingyuan took the brush and swiftly signed his name on that duplicate contract. The strokes were sharp and fierce, almost piercing through the back of the paper. Then he picked up the private seal beside him, dipped it in the ink paste, and fiercely pressed it down next to his name. The bright red finger marks were like a brand of humiliation. He put down the pen and threw one of the contracts at me, his eyes bone, chillingly cold without a shred of warmth remaining. Now, are you satisfied? I took that piece of paper, which was light as a feather yet weighed 1,000 pounds, and carefully checked the signature and fingerprint on it, confirming there were no errors. Satisfied. I folded the contract carefully, placed it in my bosom, and kept it close to my body. Brother Mingyuan is deeply righteous. Qingxi is endlessly grateful. After saying that, I no longer looked at his iron blue, twisted face, but turned and curtsied gracefully to my parents. Father, mother, your daughter is feeling a bit unwell and will take her leave now. Then, under the gaze of everyone present, I straightened my back, took Yunke, and calmly left this suffocating flower hall. Behind me was a deathly silence, as well as the stormy waves that were about to erupt within the Gyu family. Through the fabric, my fingertips could feel the outline of the contract in my bosom. The first step accomplished. Gu Mingyuan, this is just the beginning. Your road to success, I will smash it to pieces, inch by inch with my own hands. After the farce of the engagement banquet, I couldn't even be bothered to keep up appearances. Using the excuse of concentrating on preparing for the wedding and learning to manage the dowry, I took Yunke and a few trusted servants and moved back to the Shen family's separate estate in the west of the city. The Gu family. Gu Mingyuan sent people to deliver a few sincere and deeply affectionate letters. It was nothing more than explaining that his mother had just lost her head out of worry that day, hoping I would consider the big picture and not let a rift form. I looked at the hypocrisy seeping from between the lines and tossed it straight into the charcoal basin. The orange flames licked the letter paper, burning those pretentious words to ashes. The big picture. My game is the big picture. The separate courtyard is quiet, just right for making a move. The first night after moving in, I dismissed the attendants, lit a candle, and spread out a sheet of snowy Schwan paper. I lifted the brush, concentrating. The tip was soaked in ink, yet it hovered over the paper, remaining suspended for a long time. It wasn't hesitation, I was sorting through my thoughts. 10 years of memories from my past life, like a shattered scroll, rapidly reassembled and flashed through my mind. Which business opportunities would skyrocket? Which figures would wield monstrous power? Which events would be earth-shattering? I closed my eyes briefly, and when I opened them again, my gaze was clear and calm. The pen tip landed, no longer the delicate handwriting of a sheltered maiden, but running script carrying a hint of sharp edge. Busyness opportunities for the next 10 years. Won. Overseas spices in 3 years. Admiral Zheng Yuanyang will wipe out the great pirates of the East Sea and open up the shipping routes. The price of South Sea spices will plummet, but top-tier ambergris and Chinan agarwood will be hyped to sky. High prices need to plan ahead and hoard rare varieties at low prices. 2. Southwest Timber. 5 years from now, His Majesty intends to build the Wangxian Terrace's temporary palace for prayer and summer retreat, featuring Southwest red sandalwood and golden silk namu. Currently, the Southwest is a land of miasma. Timber merchants are unwilling to venture deep, and prices are low. Need to send people there immediately to establish purchasing channels. 3. Northern Furs. 2 years from now, there will be a rare severe winter. The price of top-quality mink and fox furs will increase more than 5-fold for Zhongyan silk. The intricate brocades currently in fashion have reached their peak. Soon, a lightweight fabric named plain shadow gauze will rise to popularity, originating from a Jingsu workshop in Suhang that is on the verge of bankruptcy. I wrote down over 10 items in one breath, annotating key time points and operational details after each one. This will be the cornerstone of my empire of wealth. The next day, I summoned Yunke and Shenfu, the old steward of the villa. Shenfu was one of father's old retainers. In the previous life, he was loyal to the Shen family, but because he was pushed out by Gu Mingyuan, he died of depression. I pushed a box of jewelry I had no use for in front of him. Uncle Fu, sell these quietly for cash. Be quick. It doesn't matter if the price is 10 or 20% lower. Miss, this. I looked at him, my gaze calm. Uncle Fu, trust me. Since father has entrusted the dowry entirely to my hands, I have my own plans. I have a great use for this money. My composure and decisiveness influenced him. Shenfu asked no more questions, solemnly putting away the box. This old servant understands. The funds were quickly in place according to the list. I dispatched several shrewd and reliable merchant caravans. Carrying my handwritten letters and startup capital, they set off for various places. One team heads to the coast, contacts those sea merchants who are currently small in scale, but control sources of special spices, and signs long-term exclusive contracts. One team goes deep into the dense forests of the Southwest, disregarding immediate costs to establish a stable supply line of high-quality timber. Send others to Suhang to find that Jingshu Fang, take control of it through technology equity and massive capital injection, and start secretly developing Suing gauze. The marketplace is a battlefield, intelligence is life. While spreading out my business tentacles, I launched another, more secretive front, intelligence. Gu Mingyuan and the third prince backing him are like venomous snakes coiled in the shadows. If I don't find their vital weak spots, I'll never be able to sleep soundly. I mobilized some of the Shen family's hidden connections. This network wasn't even used in my previous life, right up until the Shen family's ruin. Now, they've become my eyes and ears. Target, Gu Mingyuan, and a few core officials from the third prince's faction. I didn't rashly go investigating those core secrets. That would easily startle the snake. I only had them keep an eye on some seemingly trivial small matters. Seoul, which restaurants and tea houses has Gu Mingyuan been frequenting recently? Who is he meeting in secret to? Those officials under the third prince. Is there any unusual activity in their households? Any sudden wealth or financial trouble? 3. In lucrative government offices like water transport and river works, have there been any unusual personnel transfers or movement of funds recently? These scattered little things are like loose pearls, and I, possessing memories of my past life, hold the thread in my hand that strings these pearls together. I know that Gu Mingyuan will soon handle the first sum of dirty money for the third prince. 100,000 taels of silver allocated by the Ministry of Revenue under the pretext of taming the Qing River on the capital's outskirts. The majority of it will flow into the third prince's private coffers and the pockets of a small number of officials. Also, to cover up the deficit, they'll use shoddy materials and cook the books. Even that a year from now the Qinghe will burst its banks due to a moderate rainstorm, destroying thousands of acres of fertile land. And by then, this rotten mess will be pinned on a small official and swept under the rug. This is my chance. I didn't act right away, just calmly verified the collected information against my memories, one by one, recording it on another secret note that only I could understand. Time is on my side. A month later, the caravan I sent to the southwest sent back the first report of success. At a price 30% below market value, they secured the red sandalwood supply from 3 villages for the next 3 years. Almost at the same time, Young-Kei hurried in with the news she had just received, whispering, "Miss, our people found that young Master Gu has been frequenting Juxian Yaju in the east of the city lately, sometimes only returning late at night. Those accompanying him are mostly several vice directors from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue. Juxian Yaju. That is a small property under the third prince. On the surface, it is an elegant tea house, but in reality, it is their place for secret meetings. I walked to the window, looking at the few late plum blossoms that had just bloomed in the courtyard. The corners of my mouth curled into a cold arc. It has begun. Gu Mingyuan, the first cornerstone of your path to success is these filthy river works funds, isn't it? This will become the first crack that leads to your future ruin. Life in the annex was calm on the surface, but turbulent undercurrents surged beneath. My business empire extended outward silently like vines in the spring. Timber from the southwest, spices from overseas, silks from Jiangyan, ship after ship, cart after cart, transformed into real gold and silver, flowing into the independent treasury I had rebuilt. And my attention toward Gu Mingyuan and the third prince's faction never wavered. That afternoon, just as I was checking last month's accounts, Young-Kei led a travel. Worn man inside, He is the leader I secretly stationed in various parts of the capital to gather intelligence, codenamed Grey Falcon. Miss, there is movement. Grey Falcon's voice was very low, carrying a hint of excitement. Gu Mingyuan has been frequently visiting the residences of the capital magistrate and several officials from the Ministry of Revenue lately. His target seems to be that wasteland by the Qing River in the west of the city. My hand holding the pen paused slightly. It is here. Memories of my past life instantly became clear. It was that piece of land. It looked barren, of interest to no one. But half a year later, the imperial court would suddenly plan a new canal branch passing exactly through there and build a large official granary beside it. The land price instantly skyrocketed dozens of times over. Gu Mingyuan learned the inside information in advance, and using the third prince's influence, forcibly bought it from a few clueless farmers at a dirt-cheap price. With a quick flip, he raked in the first huge sum of private money for the third prince, earning great credit, forcibly occupying people's land, lining his own pockets. Gu Mingyuan, I am afraid your calculations won't pay off this time. I put down my pen, my gaze sharp. Is the news reliable? Have they made a move? Not yet. They're secretly contacting those families, driving the prices down ruthlessly. The farmers are reluctant, but intimidated by the other side's power. They are furious, but dare not speak out. Good. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the azure sky outside, 1,000 thoughts running through my mind. The opportunity is right before my eyes. Not only do we have to snatch it, we have to snatch it beautifully, snatch it so he has to suffer in silence. Grey Falcon, go handle 2 things immediately. First, take some men yourself, find those farmers, and buy their land deeds right now for 30% above market price. Pay in cash silver, absolutely no owing. Tell them we are legitimate businessmen, and we absolutely do not engage in forced seizures. 30% above market price. Grey Falcon hesitated slightly. That land currently doesn't seem worth that price. Right, 30% higher. What we want is speed, security, and reputation. Spending this extra money to cut off Gu Mingyuan's income and buy the farmer's gratitude is totally worth it. Yes, miss. Fay second. My gaze turned slightly cold. After you get the land deed, don't hold on to it. Go find someone. The steward of the outer court at the residence of the junior mentor to the crown prince, Lord Chen Wang. Just say that our Shen family admires His Highness, the crown prince's benevolence and virtue, and is willing to donate this land for free to build a charity granary, to prepare for emergencies and aid disaster victims. A charity granary. This is the most brilliant move I could think of. The crown prince's position is secure, and he is known for his benevolence and filial piety. Offering the land to his patronage for charity is perfectly legitimate, plus it earns a virtuous reputation. More importantly, once this land is stamped with the brand of Eastern Palace Charity Granary, it effectively becomes the crown prince's face. No matter how bold he, Gu Mingyuan, and the third prince are, would they still dare to touch the crown prince's stuff? Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, cutting off his source of wealth, and doing him a favor. Huisun's eyes lit up, clearly understanding the key to it all, and he looked at me with admiration. Brilliant idea, miss. This subordinate will see to it immediately. He turned and strode away, his figure swift as the wind. I stood where I was, my palms sweating slightly from excitement. Gu Mingyuan, when you go to close the net with full confidence, only to find that not only are the fish gone, but even the net itself has fallen into someone else's hands. What kind of expression will you have? I am really looking forward to it. Things went surprisingly smoothly. Huisun went with plenty of money and sincerity. Those farmers were currently being threatened and cajoled by people sent by the Gu family, and were holding back a bellyful of anger. Now seeing that we offered not only a fair price, but also a respectful attitude, They signed the deeds and pressed their thumbprints readily, almost without hesitation. On the very day the land deeds were secured, Huisun used his connections to send the land and the proposal for donating to the charity granary together to Junior Mentor Chen's residence. The Crown Prince's faction happened to need to consolidate a virtuous reputation among the people, so they happily accepted this piece of land that came like timely rain. Within 2 days, a subordinate official of the Crown Prince personally stepped forward to announce the matter to the public. In no time, the Shen family's good reputation for philanthropy and caring for the common people quietly spread among a portion of the scholar officials in the capital. As for me, I quietly waited for the reaction from the other side. A few days later, Juxi and Yaju inside a secluded private room. Trash. A top-quality imperial kiln teacup was fiercely smashed onto the ground, sending shards flying. The third prince's face was dark enough to drip water as he stared at Gu Mingyuan, who stood below with his head bowed. A piece of meat right at the mouth flew away, and it flew over to the eastern palace. Gu Mingyuan, is this how you handle things for this prince? Fine beads of cold sweat broke out on Gu Mingyuan's temples, and his spine went cold. He just couldn't figure it out no matter what. The land was practically in his hands. So how did someone suddenly swoop in out of nowhere to snatch it? And it was snatched away in a way he absolutely couldn't do anything about. Your Highness, please quell your anger. This matter is definitely fishy. Those peasant families are as timid as mice. They absolutely lack such guts and insight. It must be that someone is instigating them from behind. Instigated. Who, did you find out? I am investigating. Gu Mingyuan answered with difficulty. I only know that the ones who bought the land were a few merchants with unfamiliar faces, but the one who finally presented the land was the Shen family. The Shen family? Which Shen family? Is it your fiancé Fei's family? Gu Mingyuan's heart sank abruptly, and a thought he was extremely unwilling to believe surfaced in his mind. He nodded with difficulty. Yes, but it shouldn't be Uncle Shen's idea. He hasn't made any unusual moves lately. I am afraid it was Shen Qingxi. Shen Qingxi, the third prince looked like he had heard a joke. Then his eyes became even more dangerous. That merchant's daughter who humiliated you and your mother at the engagement banquet? She has such means and scheming? Gu Mingyuan was speechless. He also hoped it wasn't. But other than her, who else would sabotage his plan so precisely? Who else would offer the land to the crown prince in such a harming others without benefiting oneself manner? That Shen Qingxi, who used to be submissive to him in every way, and whose eyes were filled with admiration, when did she become so terrifying? This prince doesn't care who it is. The third prince flicked his sleeves and sat down, his tone icy. You botched this matter, not only causing this prince to lose a large sum of income, but also letting the Eastern Palace gain benefits and face for nothing. Gu Mingyuan, if you can't even handle this little thing well, this prince doesn't keep useless people by his side. These words were like an ice pick, ruthlessly stabbing into Gu Mingyuan's heart. He knelt down with a thud. Your Highness, it was my negligence. Please give me another chance. I will definitely redeem myself. The third prince glanced at him coldly, his eyes full of scrutiny and impatience. I can give you the chance, but if something like this happens again, he didn't finish, but the chill in his words made Gu Mingyuan shudder. Get out. Gu Mingyuan practically stumbled out of the private room. Walking onto the street, the warm spring sun shone on him, yet he felt chilled to the bone. The humiliation of failure, the third prince's reprimand, and that indescribable dread and anger toward Shen Qingxi, all interwoven, almost drove him mad. He suddenly clenched his fists, his fingernails digging deep into his palms. Shen Qingxi, could all of this really be your doing? Who the hell are you? He lifted his head, looking in the direction of the villa in the west of the city, his gaze as sinister as a viper. For the first time, he clearly realized that Fianc Fei he thought he could manipulate at will. It had already become a variable that was completely beyond his control and might even pose a huge threat. And at this moment, at the West City Villa, I was leisurely trimming a pot of orchids. Young hurried in, a smile she couldn't suppress on her face. "Miss, I've found out the details." When young Master Gu came out of Juxian Yazoo today, his face looked terribly ugly. I heard he got a severe scolding inside. I put down the scissors, picked up the wet handkerchief beside me, and wiped my hands unhurriedly. Oh, I raised an eyebrow, my tone indifferent, as if listening to a trivial matter that had nothing to do with me. Outside the window, the sunlight was just right. The villa on the west side seemed to have become my fortress, shutting out the wind and rain from outside. But I knew very well that the mother and son of the Gu family would absolutely never just swallow that loss and let the matter drop. Since they couldn't succeed in the open, they were bound to resort to dirty tricks. Sure enough, just a few days later, rumors drifted silently like early spring willow catkins, filling every street and alley of the capital. On this day, young Kay came back from shopping, her small face puffed up with anger, stomping her foot as soon as she entered the door. "Miss, those people outside are just spouting nonsense." I was examining a batch of red sandalwood samples newly sent from the Southwest. Hearing this, I didn't even look up my tone calm. "Oh, what are they saying about me?" "They say you are jealous, hoarding the dowry before even crossing the threshold, intolerant of others. They say you are unfilial, talking back to your future mother, in-law, moving out of the Gu house to live alone, devoid of womanly virtue. They also say you are so shrewd and calculating. Unlike a lady from a noble family, it must be that the Shen family didn't raise you well." Her voice grew quieter as she spoke. Watching my expression cautiously, I put down the wood sample in my hand, my fingertips brushing over that smooth and cold grain. Still this same old routine in my past life. They used these rumors to force me to back down step by step, leaving me no choice but to take out my dowry to prove. I wasn't jealous, returned to the Gu family to fulfill my filial duty, and played dumb to prove. I wasn't shrewd. Too bad. In this life, your script is due for a change. I even smiled a bit, picked up the teacup and took a sip. "Is that all? Nothing new." Young Kay's eyes widened. "Miss, aren't you angry? Reputation is so important for a woman. They are trying to drive you to your death." Angry. I put down the teacup, my gaze turning cold. Getting angry would play right into their hands. They want to drown me in spit, so I'll divert this water right back into their own fields. I stood up, walked to the desk, and spread out the paper. Young Kay, grind the ink. "Miss, what are you going to write?" "Writing scripts." The corners of my lips curled into a cold, sharp arc. They like to put on a show, so I'll build them an even bigger stage. What I wrote wasn't some defensive essay, but a few short yet highly inflammatory story outlines, as well as some key lines, for example. "Hey, did you hear? That young Master Gu acts high and mighty on the surface, but actually, he is just waiting for his Fianc Fei's dowry to fill his debt holes. This is called eating soft rice with a hard attitude." Absolutely. That Mrs. Gu always eyeing her future daughter. In-law's family heirloom. Her behavior is just too disgusting. What is the funniest part? That young Master Gu looks down on his Fianc Fei for being from a merchant family, while messing around with his distant cousin Liu Wanner. I heard Miss Liu's belly can barely be hidden anymore. The last item was the big gift I was giving them. In my past life, it was shortly after I married and that Liu Wanner gave birth to a son via premature labor. Counting back the time, it was conceived right at this very moment. I had previously asked Huaisun to send someone to keep watch, and sure enough, they caught evidence of Liu Wanner secretly buying fetal stabilization medicine. Rumors. I'll let you all see what it means to crush you to death with facts. I handed the things I wrote to young Kay. "Give this to the shopkeepers of Qingfeng Tea House and Sihai Restaurant. Tell them to find a few smooth-talking storytellers and waiters, and say exactly this. Qingfeng Tea House and Sihai Restaurant were precisely among the businesses I invested in and laid out earlier. Now they have become places where news circulates extremely fast in the capital. Youngkei's eyes lit up, instantly understanding my intention. Yes, miss. I'll go right now. Over the next few days, the direction of public opinion in the capital began to reverse at a speed visible to the naked eye. At first, there were still a few busybodies discussing how the Shen family's young miss failed to observe womanly virtues. But soon, even more explosive and detailed topics of conversation appeared. In the tia inside the restaurant, the waiter poured wine for a guest, lowering his voice mysteriously. Sir, haven't you heard? That Gu family. Yes, the one with the young Jinshi. Don't let his flashy exterior fool you. Actually, he is shamelessly living off a woman. He relies entirely on his fiancée's dowry to keep up appearances. Otherwise, a poor Hanlon scholar like him, where would he get the money to run off to places like Juxian Yaju every day? In the bustling streets, busybodies whispered to one another, Did you hear? The Gu Yu family's cousin, Liu Wanner, secretly saw a doctor a few days ago. It is a pregnancy pulse. For real, who is the father? Who else could it be? The Gu Yu family only has one grown young master. TSK. The fiancé hasn't even married in yet, and the cousin is already knocked up. That Gu Mingyuan really is two-faced. No wonder Miss Shen wanted to move out and hold tight to her dowry. If she had married in, wouldn't she be gnawed clean by this family until not even her bones were left? She'd have to raise a bastard for them, too. It is reasonable and well-founded with details and hard evidence. Compared to the Giyu family's vague accusations of jealousy and unfilial behavior, the shameless mooching, ugly greed, and pregnant cousin points I threw out are obviously more explosive and viral, and easier for people to believe, especially with the heavy blow of cousin's pregnancy. I even accidentally let a copy of the prescription Liu Wanner used to buy fetal protection medicine leak out. Public opinion flipped instantly. The Gu family went straight from victims bullied by an unfilial daughter-in-law to becoming a family of insatiable, morally corrupt hypocrites. The image of a virtuous talent and unswervingly devoted lover that Gu Mingyuan had painstakingly cultivated came crashing down. Now when people mention him, their eyes are filled with disdain and mockery. Did you hear? That cousin of Gu Hanlon's! You can know the face, but not the heart. Still greedy for the Shen family's million dowry, now you've lost it all. Inside the Jiyu manor, the atmosphere was as oppressive as the calm before a storm. Smack! Another whole tea set was swept onto the floor by Madame Gu. She was shaking all over with anger, her face deathly pale. Who is it? Who is spreading rumors, tarnishing my Jiu family's pure reputation, tarnishing my son's name? Gu Mingyuan sat in the lower seat, his face so gloomy it looked like water could be wrung out of it. When he went to the yamen today, his colleagues all looked at him weirdly, and some even patted his shoulder meaningfully, saying, "Congratulations." He wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Mother, who else could it be? Gu Mingyuan squeezed his voice through his gritted teeth. Except for her, Shen Qingqi, who would know about Wanner's affairs so clearly, and who has the ability to mobilize tea houses and taverns to spread rumors in such a short time. He had previously only suspected that Shen Qingxi was a variable. Now, he was almost certain of it. The force of this counterattack was so swift, precise, and ruthless, striking directly at their most fatal weak point. That poisonous woman, that lowly merchant wench, she wants to ruin my son's future. I'll go fight her to the death! Mother Gu Mingyuan shouted sternly to stop her, veins popping on his forehead. If you go to her now, wouldn't that just confirm our guilty conscience? Everyone outside is waiting to see our Gu family become a laughingstock? Then what should we do? Are we just going to let her walk all over us? My Gu family's reputation. It is ruined. Completely ruined. Gu Mingyuan clenched his fists deadly tight, his fingernails digging deep into his palms. He remained completely unaware even as blood seeped out. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of powerlessness and fear. Shen Qingxi. She was no longer the pawn played within the palm of his hand. She had turned into an opponent hidden in the shadows, with cunning and ruthless methods. She didn't even bother to personally step in to defend herself. She just lightly tossed out a few even more explosive rumors, and the image the Gu family had worked so hard to maintain crumbled overnight. This made him feel 100 times worse than being slapped right in the face. Shen Qingxi, what the hell are you trying to do? What good does ruining me do you? Of course he wouldn't understand. Some debts have to be paid with total ruin. Meanwhile, in the villa in the west of the city, I was leisurely listening to Youngke gleefully describe the Gu family's current sorry state. Miss, you are really amazing. Everyone outside is cursing the Jiu family for being shameless right now. I heard young Master Giu doesn't even dare to go to the yamen anymore. I smiled and watered the orchids on the windowsill, giving them a taste of their own medicine. The Gu family's reputation stinks, like a stone dropped into a cesspit. You'd feel your hands getting dirty just trying to fish it out. But this isn't enough. Far from enough. With their reputations ruined, at most, they'll be pointed at by people when they go out. But Gu Mingyuan and the third prince behind him are still entrenched on the chessboard of power. As long as he still has his official post, and the third prince remains in power, they have a chance to make a comeback, and the ability to keep tripping me up. Hit a snake at its 7-inch spot. Injuring 10 fingers isn't as good as severing one. My business empire expanded like a rolling snowball. Timber from the southwest, spices from overseas, sewing gauze from Jiangyan. Wealth flows like rivers into the sea, piling up mountains of gold and silver in my storehouse. It is time to let this gold and silver make the sound they ought to make. Uncle Fu. I summoned the old butler nowadays. The look in his eyes is not merely respectful, but carries a conviction like one looking at a leader. The main businesses under the Jiu family name are those silk shops and grain shops, right? Yes, miss. Especially the Rufuxiang silk shop. It is the Gu family's most profitable shop, managed by Zhou Fu, an old manager they've employed for over 20 years. This man is extremely capable and is considered loyal to the Gu family. Extremely capable? I lightly tapped the table and smiled. Then poach him. Poach him, miss. This Zhou Fu has been with the Gu family for many years, I am afraid. There is no corner that cannot be pried. Only a price that isn't high enough. Go investigate Zhou Fu. What is his weakness? Does his son need strings pulled for the imperial exams? Is his elderly mother sick and in need of rare herbs? Or does he have some unfulfilled wish of his own? Start at triple the salary and satisfy all his reasonable, or not so reasonable demands. I want Ruifuxiang completely paralyzed. Yes, Fubo hesitated no longer, took his orders and left. The power of money is sometimes simple and crude, yet incredibly effective. In less than 3 days, Zhou Fu's soft spot was found. He had a good for nothing younger brother who owed a huge gambling debt to loan sharks and was about to get his hands and feet chopped off. The Gu family turned a blind eye to this, even despising his brother for ruining the Gu family's reputation. I sent someone to find Zhou Fu, carrying enough banknotes to pay off the gambling debt, and let his brother run far away to start over, along with a contract offering 5 times the pay and 3 years' salary in advance. He only struggled for 1 night between the Gu family's sentimental ties and the realistic salvation and future. The next day, the manager of Ruifuxiang was replaced by an idiot from a side branch of the Gu family, while the capable Zhou Fu resigned due to illness, but in reality quietly became the head manager of another silk shop under my name. Immediately after, this was just the first step of my plan. Relying on my deep pockets, I began to launch targeted attacks on the Gu family's other businesses. If they wanted to buy stock, I stayed a step ahead, buying out the upstream sources at a higher price. If they wanted to sell goods, I immediately dropped prices, squeezing their market with lower rates. If they needed cash flow, I secretly applied pressure, so the money houses I knew wouldn't lend to them anymore. The Gu family's business channels were cut off one by one. The originally substantial profits shrank rapidly, and they even started to run a deficit, to maintain their respectable expenses and grease the wheels for Goming Yuan in the official circles. Madame Gu was so anxious that blisters popped up on her mouth. Cursing and swearing at home every day, he vented all his rage on that jinx, Liu Wanner. But this was only cutting off one of his arms. The other, more important arm, was Gu Mingyuan's official status, and the third prince he had latched onto. It was time to make a move here. I flipped through the latest intel sent by Grey Falcon, my gaze locking onto a name, the censorate, Lord Liu Zhengqing. In the previous life, this censor Liu was one of the few upright officials who dared to speak the truth, and didn't attach himself to any prince. About half a year later, because he submitted a memorial impeaching an official under the third prince for seizing commoners' land, he would be cleverly framed by Gu Mingyuan, pinned with the charge of accepting bribes from merchants, and eventually stripped of his post, exiled, and die of illness on the journey. As for Gu Mingyuan, because he removed this stumbling block who didn't understand the times, he was even more heavily relied upon by the third prince. I remember the evidence used for the framing, a few forged banknote transaction records, as well as a false testimony from a merchant. Censor Liu, this time I will save you. By the way, please do me a small favor. I spread out the paper and pen, but didn't write a letter. Instead, relying on the memories of my past life, I clearly listed out, one by one, Gu Mingyuan's plan to frame Censor Liu, the names and addresses of key witnesses, and the hiding places of the physical evidence. Then, I switched to a handwriting style that was completely unrecognizable and put this paper into an ordinary envelope, instructing Huisun, find a way to deliver this letter into the hands of Censor, Liu's most trusted and upright prot, Feifei. You must ensure it is safe and leaves no traces. Yes, a few days later, in the duty room of the censorate, Liu Zhengqing looked at the letter secretly presented by his prot Feifei, his brows locked tight and his expression grave. He didn't believe it at first, but the contents of the letter were too detailed. He sent people to follow the clues, and they actually found that so-called merchant, and secretly uncovered the trail of those counterfeit silver notes. All evidence indicated that someone was about to make a move against him, and the mastermind behind the scenes pointed straight at Gu Mingyuan, a senior compiler at the Hanlin Academy. Liu Zhengqing flew into a rage. He was an upright man who couldn't tolerate a speck of sand in his eyes. He already looked down on the likes of Gu Mingyuan, who clung to the powerful and schemed for gain. But now the other party dared to actively frame him. Then don't blame him for striking first to gain the upper hand. The next day, the Grand Court Assembly. The atmosphere was solemn. When the emperor asked if the various ministries had important matters to report, Liu Zhengqing, holding his jade tablet, strode out from the ranks, his voice booming like a bell. Your Majesty, your subject, Censor, Liu Zhengqing, impeaches Gu Mingyuan, senior compiler of the Hanlin Academy. Once these words were out, the whole hall was shocked. Gu Mingyuan stood in the ranks and jerked his head up, the color draining from his face in an instant. Liu Zhengqing, why is he impeaching me? We have no dealings. Gu Mingyuan, as a minister of the Hanlin Academy, thinks not of repaying the emperor's grace, but instead forms cliques for personal gain and clings to the princes. Even worse, to curry favor with his superiors, he actually engages in the filthy business of secretly framing his colleagues. His heart is damnable, his conduct despicable. Your subject implores your Majesty to strictly investigate this person, to rectify the discipline of the court. Although Liu Zhongqing didn't directly bring up the third prince's name, the words, forming cliques for private gain, clinging to a prince's, were like a thunderclap, exploding in the Golden Hall. The emperor's face darkened. Immediately, several officials who were usually at odds with the third prince, or who admired Liu Zhongqing's character, spoke up one after another in agreement. Your Majesty, what Censor Liu said must be investigated. Compiler Gu is young. Perhaps it was a momentary lapse of judgment, but framing a colleague, this trend absolutely cannot be encouraged. Gu Mingyuan felt ice, cold all over. With a thud, he knelt on the ground, his voice trembling. Your Majesty, I am wrongly accused. I have been loyal to Your Majesty, and never harbored any intention of framing Censor Liu. This must be someone framing me. His mind was in complete chaos. How could Liu Zhongqing know? How could he know so clearly? Is it Shen Qingqi? It must be her. Who else but her would scheme so deliberately to harm him? But he didn't have any evidence. The emperor on the dragon throne looked at Gu Mingyuan, who was kneeling on the ground below in a panic, then looked at Liu Zhongqing, whose face was the picture of righteousness. His expression was deep and unfathomable. My dear Minister Gu, the emperor spoke slowly, his voice devoid of joy or anger. Censor Liu's impeachment of you is surely not without cause. This matter shall be handed over to the Ministry of Justice and the Dali Temple for a joint investigation. Until the truth is ascertained, you are to reflect on your misdeeds behind closed doors at your manor. You need not come to the Hanlin Academy anymore. Reflect behind closed doors, suspended pending investigation. Although he wasn't thrown directly into prison, for Gu Mingyuan, who had just stepped into his official career and was full of ambition, this was undoubtedly a fatal blow. His future was uncertain, and his reputation was ruined. He practically went limp as he was, helped out of the Golden Hall by the attendants. The gazes behind him held sympathy, held disdain, but mostly, they were gloating. He knew he was finished. Even if no hard evidence was found in the end, he would forever be branded with the stains of forming cliques for personal gain, and being impeached and suspended. His path to rapid advancement was, at this point, completely cut off. Upon returning to the Gu Manor, he was greeted by Madame Gu's even more hysterical wailing and Liu Waner's timid, fearful concern. Gu Mingyuan locked himself in the study and smashed everything that could be smashed. Anger, fear, and that bone-eroding, heart-piercing unwillingness almost swallowed him whole. Shen Qingqi, Shen Qingqi, you cut off my wealth, ruined my reputation, and now you want to end my official career. What a cruel heart you have. What vicious methods. His eyes were bloodshot, looking like a madman. He knew he couldn't just sit there and wait to die. This woman must be eliminated, at all costs. And at this moment, at the West City Villa, I listened to Grey Falcon's report while unhurriedly sipping a cup of newly arrived Yuqian Longjing. Miss Gu Mingyuan has been suspended and confined to his home to reflect. The third prince seems to have temporarily given up on him too and didn't plead for him. I nodded. Everything is proceeding according to my plan. Sever his business arm, leaving him without financial support. Sever his political limbs, stripping him of his very foundation. Gu Mingyuan now, you should understand what it means to be at a dead end, right? But this is still not enough. What I want is not for him to be at a dead end, but rather for him to be reduced to ashes. I set down the teacup, a trace of icy killing intent passing through my eyes. The news of Gu Mingyuan being suspended pending investigation flew across the capital as if it had grown wings. Gu Hanlin, once basking in infinite glory, had now become a plague god that everyone scrambled to avoid. The Gu family's main gate was tightly shut and completely deserted, exuding the desolate panic of monkeys scattering when the tree falls. My annex, however, remained peaceful, but I knew that beneath this peace lay a volcano about to erupt. A cornered dog will jump a wall, and a cornered rabbit will bite let alone. A hypocrite like Gu Mingyuan, and that third prince behind him who couldn't afford to lose. What I was waiting for was this very moment when they'd act out of desperation. Miss, a letter sent from the Gu family. Yonkeld, an unsigned letter, brows furrowed tight. They say young Master Gu wants to see you one last time. There is something he wants to explain in person. I took the letter and glanced at it. The handwriting was indeed Gu Mingyuan's, the tone unprecedentedly downcast and sincere. Saying things like, "Knowing my sins are heavy, I am too ashamed to see you again. But for the sake of past affection, I only ask for one last meeting to make a clean break." And the location was set at a secluded courtyard outside the city with few worshippers. One last time to end things. To finish me off is more like it, right? I can almost imagine Jiu Mingyuan's expression as he wrote this letter, gritting his teeth while forced to put on a front. And the cold, sinister eyes of the third prince behind him, having lost a dog as useful as Gu Mingyuan, and a large sum of money besides. How could he possibly let it go? A juicy piece of meat like me. Since they can't eat it, they plan to snatch it by force, or even destroy it. "Miss, this is definitely a trap. You can't go," young Kay said urgently. The old butler Shen Fu also looked worried. "Miss, it is too dangerous. The Gao family is at the end of their rope now. They're capable of anything." I looked at them, a trace of warmth flowing through my heart, but my gaze remained calm. "I know it is a trap." I gently rubbed the warm, smooth jade whistle in my sleeve. I had secretly commissioned it using the profits from my first batch of spices, and it could emit a sharp sound at a specific frequency. But some traps, you have to jump into them to bury the person who set the trap along with you. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the setting sun in the distance, which was dyeing the horizon a blood red. "Uncle Fu, go make the arrangements as we discussed earlier. Young Kay, go send a reply. Just say that I will attend the appointment on time." The night poured down like thick ink. The villa outside the city stood lonely at the foot of the mountain, the surroundings so quiet that only the chirping of insects could be heard. There were no lights, only the bleak moonlight outlining its pitch, black silhouette, like a dormant giant beast. I took young Kay, along with the 4 guards on the surface, and stepped through the main gate of the villa. The courtyard was empty, with only a faint dim candlelight shining from the main hall. Gu Mingyuan sat alone in the hall, wearing a plain long gown. He looked haggard, his eyes dull. He really did look somewhat like a down. And out-scholar. It was just the ruthlessness that occasionally flashed across his eyes that betrayed him. "Kingxi, you are here." He stood up, his voice hoarse, carrying a deliberately manufactured sadness. I didn't get close, standing at the door, the moonlight stretching my shadow long. "Young Master Gu, if you have something to say, just say it." My tone was flat, without a trace of emotion. The muscles on his face twitched, as if stung by my addressing him as young Master Gu. He took 2 steps forward and said with bitter regret, "Kingxi, how did we come to this? I know my mother offended you plenty before, and I perhaps had my faults too, but why must you be so cruel as to cut off my future and ruin my Gu family?" "Ha," shifting the blame. "Or are you at death's door and still trying to play the devoted lover?" I couldn't be bothered to play along with him and pierced right through it. "Gu Mingyuan saved the act. It was you and the third prince who were insatiably greedy and reaped what you sowed. If you called me here just to say this, then I'll take my leave." "I made a move to leave." "Wait," Gu Mingyuan shouted hurriedly, his eyes instantly becoming sharp and crazed. "Since you know everything, then I won't beat around the bush." He suddenly clapped his hands. Swish, swish, swish. From the eaves and behind the walls, dozens of dark figures instantly emerged. They held steel blades, their eyes vicious, and silently surrounded the few of us completely. A cold, killing intent spread out. Even the air seemed to freeze. Yongke and several guards immediately drew their swords, shielding me in the center, but facing enemies several times their number. Their expressions were incredibly grave. The dagger is revealed. Finally, no more pretending. Gu Mingyuan wore a savage grin of anticipated victory. Shen Qingxi, you think you've won? Let me tell you tonight. You couldn't escape, even with wings. Hand over all the land deeds, house deeds, and warehouse keys, under your name, as well as the locations where you've hidden your gold and silver. Hand them all over. I might be able to give you a quick death. In his eyes were undisguised greed and killing intent. I looked at him, looking at those men in black closing in around us. My heart was icy cold, yet there wasn't a shred of panic. Gu Mingyuan, are you that sure you've got me cornered? Otherwise. Gu Mingyuan laughed triumphantly. You think with just these few people of yours, you can stop His Highness, the Third Prince's death warriors. Stop dreaming. A wise person knows when to submit. He thought I was scared silly or bluffing. I sighed softly, as if in regret, and also as if in mockery. It seems you all still don't understand. Don't understand me, Shen Qingxi. Since I dared to come, I definitely wouldn't be unprepared. At the instant Gu Mingyuan and those men in black were about to attack, I raised my hand and placed the jade whistle I had been clutching in my sleeve to my lips, then blew with all my might. Whee! An extremely sharp, piercing whistle suddenly tore through the night sky. It echoed far into the distance. This sound was too abrupt, too ear-piercing, causing the movements of all the men in black to pause for a moment. The smile on Gu Mingyuan's face froze, and he looked at me in bewilderment. You? What are you doing? I didn't answer, just stood there quietly, feeling the night breeze brush against my cheeks. 1 second, 2 seconds. Inside and outside the courtyard, there was a deathly silence. Only the rustling sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. Gu Mingyuan was the first to react, flying into a rage out of humiliation, playing tricks. Get her. Kill her. The men in black hesitated no longer, brandishing their steel blades, and lunged forward fiercely, just at the moment when the blade of the man in black at the very front was about to touch my guard. Swish! 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 Denser, fiercer sounds of breaking air suddenly rang out from outside the courtyard walls. From the rooftops, that wasn't a whistle. It was crossbow bolts. Black crossbow bolts, like deadly vipers, shot into the throats and hearts of those men in black with incomparable precision. Erg. There is an ambush. Screams of misery rose one after another. The men in black, who were aggressive just a moment ago, fell in swaths instantly like harvested wheat. The courtyard gate was crashed open by a tremendous force. Firelight suddenly flared up. Dozens of well-trained guards clad in black combat gear, armed with powerful crossbows and sharp blades, surged in like a tide, as if descending from the heavens. Their movements were synchronized, their eyes sharp as eagles, and in an instant they turned the tables and surrounded the remaining men in black. The one in the lead was none other than Grey Falcon. He held a long blade dripping with blood. Shielding me, his voice steady. Miss, your subordinate is late to the rescue. Gu Mingyuan was completely dumbfounded. He stared, slack-jawed, at this sudden reversal, watching as the death soldiers he brought were rendered helpless to fight back under the opponent's precise strikes, watching that group of obviously elite private troops that had suddenly appeared. The blood drained completely from his face, and his legs trembled uncontrollably. Number impossible. How could you? How could you have private soldiers? This is impossible. I walked slowly up to him, looking at his face twisted by fear and disbelief, as if looking at an ant. Gu Mingyuan, my voice was soft, yet carried a crushing weight smashing onto his heart. Do you think that, living a second life, I would still be like the last one, letting you all slaughter me at will? Every step you take is within my calculations, including tonight, your insidious schemes. Just then, Grey Falcon stepped forward and whispered, "Miss, as you ordered, we've got the goods." The ironclad proof of the third prince's secret correspondence with the Northern D was delivered into the Crown Prince's confidant's manor amidst the chaos as our men retreated. I nodded. Very good. Removing the fuel from the fire, cutting off his limbs, and now luring him into the trap, caught red-handed. Gu Ming Yuan, and the third prince behind you. Your death trap has already been set. The night wind, carrying the stench of blood, swirled through the villa. Torches crackled, lighting up the courtyard as bright as day. The so-called death soldiers he brought didn't stand a chance against the well-trained, well-equipped private troops. By now they were all slain, or disarmed and pinned to the ground. Number, impossible. Gu Mingyuan looked as if his spine had been ripped out. He stumbled backward until his back pressed against the cold wall. With nowhere left to retreat, he stared dead at me, his eyes bulging with fear and disbelief. Private soldiers. How dare you? How could you? I slowly paced forward, he soon guarding my side with a blade, his vigilant gaze scanning the surroundings. My shadow was stretched by the firelight, looming over Gu Mingyuan, huddled in the corner. How could I? I stopped walking, looking down at him, my voice calm, but every word like a knife. Gu Mingyuan, do you really think I am still that Shen Qingxi who was easily manipulated by you and your mother using wifely virtue and sentiment, and finally drowned in the lotus pond like a thrown away rag? The lotus pond. Gu Mingyuan shuddered violently, his pupils constricting, as if he had heard the most terrifying words in the world. You? What nonsense are you spouting? Nonsense? I laughed, that laugh sounding exceptionally cold in the silent night. Do I need to remind you? Just 3 months later, you used the excuse of taking me to view the lotuses, right by that pond at your house. Your dear cousin Liu Wanner pushed me from behind. You just stood by and watched, right? I leaned down, closing in on his face, twisted by extreme fear, and word by word, I slammed the blood debts of my past life ruthlessly into his face. You said, "Kingxi, don't blame me. You come from a merchant family. Ultimately, you are not presentable. Wanner will take good care of your dowry for you." Gu Mingyuan, my million dowry didn't raise a Jinqi's wife. It is your death warrant. With every sentence I spoke, Gu Mingyuan's face turned a shade paler, and his body trembled that much harder. When I uttered the dying words he thought no one knew about, he completely broke down. "Ghost! You are a ghost! You aren't Shen Qingxi!" he screamed, trying to curl up to hide from my cold gaze. "How do you know? How could you possibly know?" "Because I am not a ghost." I straightened up, staring at him coldly as if passing judgment. I am a creditor who crawled back from hell to demand lives from you, from the Gu family, and from the third prince. Just then, the sudden tolling of a dull bell came from the direction of the imperial city in the distance, one after another, urgent and grim. That was the warning bell that would only be rung when a major upheaval occurred in the palace. Almost simultaneously, a private soldier sent out to gather news rushed in, knelt on one knee, his voice loud and filled with excitement. "Miss, the Imperial Guards have mobilized and surrounded the third prince's residence. News has come from the palace that His Highness the Crown Prince entered the palace overnight and presented ironclad evidence of the third prince colluding with the Northern D, illicitly forging weapons, and plotting treason. His Majesty is furious and has issued a decree to confine the third prince and purge his accomplices. It is here," the hidden card I arranged, finally at this moment, dealt a fatal blow. Mingyuan was thunderstruck. His whole body went limp, his face ashen. The third prince's downfall meant his last backer had collapsed. He was finished, and the Gu family was finished too. "Number, it can't be, Your Highness," he murmured to himself, his gaze unfocused, plunged into complete despair. "It seems your climb to the top ends here." This sentence became the final straw that broke him. The hurried yet orderly sounds of horse hooves and footsteps came from outside the courtyard, and the light of torches turned half the sky red. Soldiers from the capital prefecture and officers from the Ministry of Justice rushed in. The leading official was startled at first upon seeing the scene in the courtyard. Then his gaze fell on me, and he politely cupped his hands. "Miss Shen, by imperial decree, we are to raid the Gu estate and arrest the criminal Gu Mingyuan." I nodded slightly and stepped aside. The soldiers pounced like wolves, roughly dragging the limp, as mud Gu Mingyuan up and putting heavy shackles on him. The moment he was dragged out of the courtyard gate, Gu Mingyuan seemed to have a final burst of energy. He struggled violently to turn his head, screaming with his last ounce of strength, his voice shrill as a ghoul. "Shen Qingqi, you will die a horrible death. You witch, I won't let you off even as a ghost." I stood where I was, watching expressionlessly as he was dragged into the endless darkness. The sound of his cursing grew distant, finally dissipating in the night wind. "A ghost, Gu Mingyuan. We are both people who have already died once, but this time, the one staying in hell will only be you." Half a month later, the imperial decree was issued. The third prince was stripped of his titles and confined for life. Gu Mingyuan framed court officials and formed cliques for personal gain. The evidence was irrefutable, and he was sentenced to execution after autumn. The Guyu family's assets were confiscated. The male members exiled 3,000 Lai, and the female relatives sent to the Jiaofangxi. And that Liu Wanner, who had been hiding in the Guyu family's inner quarters, dreaming of being a top scholar's wife, went into premature labor from shock on the day of the raid, dying of a massive hemorrhage. 2 lives lost in one body. The once prominent Guyu family vanished, just like that, becoming a topic of conversation for the capital's commoners over tea and meals. A story that brought both sighs of lament and applause of satisfaction. Autumn went and winter came. Another year passed. My business empire has spread all over the country, its reach even extending overseas. I became the richest woman in this dynasty, bar none. No one dares to look down on me anymore, because I am a woman or a merchant. The imperial court even broke precedent to bestow upon me the title of Lady Engguo, because I generously opened my purse multiple times during famines to stabilize public sentiment. Standing on the top floor of the tallest restaurant under my name, I looked down at the bustling, brightly lit capital beneath my feet. The cold wind brushed against my face, yet it carried the crisp scent of freedom. Young craped a heavy sable coat over me and whispered, "Madam, it is getting cold. Let's go back." I nodded, taking one last look at this world where I had once fallen, and also risen. Everything from my past life, the love and hatred, has all vanished, like smoke with the downfall of the Gu family. In this life, I am no longer anyone's appendage, no longer anyone's stepping stone. My destiny is written by myself. I, Shen Qingxi, am my only endgame,